We're holding your first glass. We're gonna make us famous. Here we
There
go.
Oh, love it.
My mom's gonna be so proud.
That's my boy drinking that whiskey. All right, come on. That's your- This thing never tells you that you are, and here we are. We're live. All right, let me get this thing squared away, and we'll be ready to rock and roll, I think. Come on, there we go. All right, let's record this to the cloud. All right. Well, you know what? It's Wednesday, so that means it's Whiskey Wednesday. Returning for his triumphant victory lap is Trey Wade from, of course, Blue Run Spirits, and we got some celebrating to do tonight. I definitely think so. We have some celebrating to do tonight, but more importantly, we have whiskey to drink.
Oh yeah.
All right. So, and it's even better when they're one and the same.
Right. Yeah.
Right. All right. So Trey's back. Blue Run is here tonight. Who is not? Has anybody not had Blue Run?
Oh.
Not had Blue Run? Oh, dude, you're in for a treat tonight. There we go. Yes. All right. Do we make him go through the hazing of this?
Yeah. That's like, all
right. Now, Gio, get the Malort. We got some first timers. We get some first timers. Get the Malort. Yes. Oh, Jägermeister. And you know what's so funny? You're hoping it lands on Jägermeister. All right. We got a great lineup for you tonight. Everybody that's following us on Facebook Live, thank you for coming in. Just so you know, you can also get this once we're done. Cousin Vinny gets it up on wherever you get your podcast. Find it. Go look for It's the Liquor Talking on Spotify, wherever you get that type of stuff. But I will tell you, we have a special treat for you guys tonight. At some point, everybody that's following us online will not be able to join us. It's that secret.
I brought you guys something that doesn't exist.
And it doesn't leave this room that it doesn't. All right. So that's what you have waiting for you at the end of the rainbow. All right. But we got a lot of whiskey to go through before we get there.
Oh yeah.
All right. So since we have some people that have never had Blue Run before, let's start from the beginning and give an encapsulated beginning. We can tell people that you can start drinking your first whiskey, which is Reflection 1, right, which is sort of like that's the flagship.
Right. Yeah, I'm gonna land you guys in 2020. Let's ignore COVID. Act like that didn't happen. However, in 2020, we launched this brand.
I'm gonna say one thing. Right. We have Reflections 2, so you may want to leave a little bit of this in your glass and passing it out right now.
So this is gonna be really cool, right? We're gonna have some compare and contrast, and you'll get to see a little bit of our evergreen in our barrel inventory, kind of like a wine vintage, right? So that's what Reflection 1 and 2 are going to represent. So Reflection 1 was the first one that had the 95 proof blend of 5 and 6 year old whiskey. And Reflection 2 is a 100 proof blend of 6 and 7 year old whiskey. So you're going to get a little bit of a contrast, compare and contrast. This is essentially our chapterized storage strategy. So for the folks that keep up with wine, every year you have a vintage. And what does a vintage show up?
You work that year.
Well, it shows off grapes are seasonal crops, right? They grow. It shows off what the grapes did that year, whether climate change or terroir, or production changes, etc. You show off exactly
if you messed up or didn't mess up,
or didn't mess up, right? Vintages. So we look at our barrels almost as living crops because they do expand and breed, and whiskey evolves. Right. So every year, we have a cycle. It's like an 18-month cycle. Every cycle, Jalen, our head of whiskey innovation and development, will go into our inventory, and she gets to create kind of like a vintage, right? Because we have some other quartz.
It's a picture of time.
Exactly. And if you keep up with this, if anybody a fan of like Blood Oath or Balsam from Whistle Pig, right? Like it's cool. Anybody wish they could have went back and got Blood Oath back in wine? Yeah. And looked it up, it was like $2,500 for that $70 bottle. So
thanks.
And then Blood Oath, you get the Balsam for the first edition now. That's huge. Reflection is going to be that for us down the road, right?
This is where it begins.
Correct. So this is how we started the book. There's five guys came together from really eclectic backgrounds, Facebook and Nike and Land Lobby, and a bunch of other stuff. And they came together, and the coolest thing about it is they realized they had no idea how to make whiskey. They had no idea how to be successful in the whiskey world, but they knew they wanted to do this.
You know what I always say?
Go ahead.
You want to make a little money in the whiskey world, you start with a lot.
You start with that. That is a very true nomenclature. So, but the smartest thing that they did was they reached out to folks that knew the whiskey world. So folks like Jim Rutledge, Like that's a big freaking name. Jim Rutledge is the reason see afterwards.
Do you guys know who Jim Rutledge is? Anybody doesn't know who Jim Rutledge is?
Just some guy.
Some guy off the side of the road.
First inducted class inducted to the Bourbon Hall of Fame in Kentucky. So
I'll give you just a small synopsis of a little bit of his history. He was in charge of the yeast programs for Seagram's. There's not many people that know more about yeast than Jim Rutledge. He was he was the master distiller for Four Roses
30 years.
for 30 years, and he was the guy responsible for you being able to get Four Roses here in the United States because it's a Japanese-owned company, and they were only selling like the really good stuff to Japan and not here in the United States. So if you like some of the Four Roses stuff, he was the guy behind that. Now he's a myth, a legend, a workhorse.
Yeah, he's like it's like seeing a Yeti.
Yeah.
You know, he's like this person really real.
He's real.
Yeah.
So, and he is the guy who distilled the stuff we're tasting.
Yeah, some of the distilled we're gonna taste everything.
Ours, everything.
Was Jim Rutledge distilled.
Yeah.
So that's pretty awesome. But so they reached these 5 guys of great whiskey people reached out to drink whiskey into me. Jim being kind of our flagship. They called some guy in Trey. I have no clue why. I took them to figure that out, which is up here. And then they called Peggy Stevens, guy named Sandy Halper.
Oh, that Trey.
And we kind of stewarded in through how to get into the whiskey space with specific focuses. Jim is production, Peggy's kind of PR, Sammy was distribution, and I would, what do consumers care about whiskey, right? How do we put our brand in front of people in a meaningful way that's not performative and it actually tells a story? Because it has a great story. And I'll start with that. So people ask about the butterfly. It's not some random thing we just picked out, out of a Rolodex of clip art. Devin McKinney, who was our CMO at the time, he's the executive director for Nike's Air Force One franchise. No big deal. Kind of knows how to make stuff look sexy, right? He said, "I want this brand to be iconic." And when you think of iconic, there's usually not a lot of words that go into it. So we started with the butterfly. The reason being is that the Kentucky is one, we wanted a brand that represented the metamorphosis that was happening in the whiskey world, right? Whether it's craft distilling or people of color and diverse consumers, more finishes. Just we've opened up the floodgates in terms of
No boundaries.
no boundaries, right?
Right.
We didn't want to. The only constraint on our entire brand in terms of what we would do with this bottle is it's got to be Kentucky,
Okay.
right? So
Makes sense.
then we said, well, what is like a thing about Kentucky that people just don't know yet? And Devin is a huge Muhammad Ali fan. So everyone's heard "float like a butterfly, sting like a bee." So Muhammad Ali's poetry style was very literal, right? He's a creative human, of course, but he was very literal. He talked about his life experiences, and if you watch him going through the draft, he compared himself to things that were literal. And so "float like a butterfly, sting like a bee" happened while Muhammad Ali was running through Louisville, sat on a park bench because the butterflies were hatching. The largest population of viceroy butterfly in North America is in Louisville, Kentucky, which that's the type of butterfly this is. He sits on a park bench and watches the butterflies kind of do their thing after a run, and he gets stung by a bee 2 days before a fight. That was 2 days before it said "float like a butterfly, sting like a bee." So it was just an homage to Kentucky. This is the state butterfly of Kentucky. We're paying homage to a Kentucky legend and our icon, etc. We wanted to be iconic. And then we can't just put a butterfly on it because TTD requires your product to actually have a name. So Blue Run came up when the 5 founders were in Georgetown, Kentucky, where one of our co-founders, Jesse McKnight, is from. And he was kind of telling them the heritage of bourbon in Georgetown. Right now, so since Prohibition, you couldn't legally have a distillery. And you couldn't even have a brewery until the early 2000s in Georgetown, Kentucky, because it was a dry county. Before Prohibition, there was a gentleman by the name of Elijah Craig, who was from Georgetown, Kentucky. He used to make his bourbon in Georgetown, Kentucky. That first charred oak barrel that people talk about with Elijah Craig, it happened in Georgetown, Kentucky. The land that he had his distillery on was right across the street from where Jesse McKnight grew up. And the reason we know that is because if you go to Georgetown, Kentucky today, there's a plaque in the middle of this field that says, "Here lies Elijah Craig's Blue Run Baptist Church." The reason he called his church the Blue Run is because behind that, the stream of water that he was getting his water for his whiskey from, is a shallow, wide, limestone-bedded river that doesn't have a lot of dirt or sediment in it. So when the sun hits it, it shines bluish. A lot of locals swim in it and fish in it. It's just kind of a natural stream of water that just has a very, very natural blue hue to it. And it's fed by the spring called the Royal Spring, which is a historical spring in Georgetown, Kentucky. So that spring That speckled water is called the Blue Run. That all ties back to, again, a prominent figure in Kentucky bourbon history. And this is an opportunity between our brand and our name to pay respect to all the caterpillars while we became the butterfly of industry. That's our story. Fast forward, whiskey gets involved. So Shaylin Gammon, we stole her from Campari. Anybody ever had Russell's 13, Russell's Reserve 13, batch one specifically? Just kind of won whiskey of the year, best whiskey of the year, whiskey advocate. So Shaylin is a mastermind. She is a super sensor, like scientifically diagnosed or clinically diagnosed as a super sensor. She can smell.
That's better than what I'm diagnosed.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, me too.
I don't say what I'm diagnosed with. So, but she is really talented in being able to dissect. Like she also has a food science degree from UK. So like she also has the training outside of the raw talent. But she blended Russell 13 while she was pregnant, meaning she blended the best whiskey of the year without being able to take it, exclusively on her news. So we knew we had to have her. She comes over, joins us, and we already have kind of a die cut because Jim was making whiskey for us already. We already die cut what we needed our course used to be. We needed this great talent, this person, Shaylin, an opportunity to really showcase what she's great at. And so that's where Reflection came from. It's an opportunity for us to show off, hey, yeah, we might have 4 or 5 year whiskey right now, but here's an opportunity to follow the journey and the progression of not only this really beautiful whiskey that was made by a legend, but this world renowned whiskey blender who gets to go and paint our own canvas, right? So that's what Reflection. So Reflection 1 came into our brand at a time when we didn't have anything that was what I would consider an everyday sipper. If you meet Jim's drank whiskey for 75, probably more years than that now. And so he's kind of tasted most of the stuff out there. He likes big, bold, in-your-face flavors with a rye and the yeast more than the corn, because you expect corn with whiskey. You want to expect it. Or with bourbon, but you expect corn, because it's got to be at least half that. So he wants to show a whiskey that showcases the other grain and the yeast complexity in a whiskey. So our first whiskey to market, our first whiskey that Jim distilled after we released some 13-year and 14.
Yeah, you did some like older stuff first. It was sort of like, just getting the name out there.
Those were honey barrels that Jim,
right.
Jim has this he has this shake and shake test thing that's kind of, it's a weird thing to watch when you go to the distillery. So most often, if you're buying barrels from a broker or a distillery, most people don't need to go to where they're buying barrels from. Jim's not most people. If you go, usually they'll have a couple of samples, and say you want to buy 100 barrels, they'll have a couple of samples, 2 or 3, as a representation of that, what's called a lot, right? Jim doesn't buy barrels without tasting, which was a big blessing for us because we knew that we were going to check the box for quality, and Jim's test is it's a QC, right? So a quality control test, and so he's gonna walk up to that barrel, he's gonna kick the side of it. I don't know what he's listening for, but if it sounds good, he'll then have somebody shake it, and then if it sounds good again, what's a good barrel sound like?
One that's only 3/4 full.
It doesn't sound empty, especially if it's been in 10, 12, $14,000.
At least 3/4 full.
Correct. You want to have some whiskey in the barrel. So if it sounds worthwhile to investigate, you'll taste it. And if you taste it and he likes it, we bought it. So we were able to hand and cherry pick barrels because of Jim Rutledge from some prominent distillers. And that's what helped us launch our brand with whiskey that was reputable and established. Fast forward when Jim's whiskey came of age in spring of 21.
Can we say where Jim distilled this whiskey?
So Jim was distilling at Castle Key. So after Jim retired, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit when I get to our ride. After Jim retired, before I jump to that, Reflection 1 in your left hand, stone fruit, 95 proof. This is our everyday sipper. This is an easy whiskey. This is a whiskey that, because of high rye and emerald rye, which we'll get to in a minute, we needed it in our portfolio. Reflection 2 on the right hand side is meant to show off kind of those brown notes, the sugar, the caramel, the corn. It's going to bump up just a little bit in proof. This is going to taste much closer to like what you would expect from a Kentucky straight bourbon. This is the expected whiskey, is what we were aiming for, because we still didn't have either of those in our portfolio because the whiskey that Jim was putting out and that blending was the unexpected. Right. So that compare and contrast is nice. I
like both of them, but each in a different little way here.
So Reflection 1 is game.
I'm reflecting that I like both of them.
That's exactly. It's one of those whiskeys that was designed during COVID. Everybody's kind of stuck in their house. You got more time than you've ever had before, and you're stir crazy. Like looking at your walls, it's like a lot of us reconsider. Like, do I go back to work? Like, do I sell my house and become nomadic and start traveling around the world? What do I do with all this time? Like, it was a very introspective time of life for a lot of us, and we were kind of forced to sit back and reflect. We were stuck and we were sequestered to our homes. It was. That's where the name came from. It was truthfully a time where we were all forced to think about it's our next four.
What do you guys think? Reflection 1. Out of the two, I mean, it really doesn't make a difference.
Like
Reflection 1. Reflection 1. Better.
I love it.
Reflection 2.
Right. Oh, well, that
We don't have Reflection 2. Not yet. Not yet. You guys are getting a sneak peek tonight.
Yeah.
Reflection 1 is not in the state yet. So we got Reflection 1. Reflection 1's upstairs. Reflection 1's been selling great. I like it a lot.
There's only 30 cases of Reflection 1 left in the
State of Massachusetts, sorry. And so that's what Reflection 2 is not available. It's not here yet. We got you some so you could try it. So that's the anticipation of things to come.
Lovely. Thank you. So kind of tracking back to Jim. So Jim, so what type of whiskey is Four Roses?
Four Roses is a high rye mash bill.
It is a high rye bourbon. They have a 21% whiskey, 36% rye mash bill. Those are the two mash bills that are 18 to 20, 36. So if you look at any of the Four Roses releases, there's two different higher rye mash bills. And what considered anybody ever heard of like a wheated bourbon? Like maybe one called Weller. Why is it called a wheated bourbon? There's a higher than industry average amount of wheat in that bourbon mash.
Usually the rye component gets replaced by wheat.
Exactly. And so when you think about it, if somebody's like, oh, it's a high rye bourbon, like that's a rye whiskey. It's no, it's a bourbon that has a higher than industry average amount of rye in it. For us, for the industry now, we kind of all, handshake and nodded and said, okay, 20% or higher of a particular grain is going to deem it a high rye. You're acknowledged as secondary grain if you surpass 20%. So if somebody put 22% of malted barley in a bourbon, it's going to be a malted bourbon. Right? Does that make sense? It's a malted bourbon, right? There's not a lot of, there's a couple of those out there, some from Florida, some other places. There's not a lot of those out there. So Jim said, Jim took one of the recipes that he presented to Seagram's that didn't get approved, and he had held on to that recipe for like 18 years until he retired. When he retired, he went to Castle and Key, and the first thing he actually just did was this lovely rye whiskey called Emerald that he tasted second. But the second thing he made was bourbon, and he called it high rye bourbon. The reason being, it's a 65% corn, 30% rye, 5% malted barley, mash bill. And so, whereas your industry, you're going to see anywhere from 21% on average is what you see in rye whiskeys. We've got 30% rye. And what that does is if you've ever cooked something acidic, like you cook tomatoes to make soup, you add some sugar to it to balance out the acidity. You ever want to, I'm from the South, so we put salt on our milk. All right, anybody ever done that? It makes it taste sweeter. So it gets the balance, the contrast brings out the actual flavors. Adding 30% rye to a predominantly corn spirit brings out some of the sweetness, but then that rye kicks in and gives you this flavor kick that you just don't find in most bourbons, especially at 5 and 6 years old. This bourbon drinks above its age, it's weight class, in most of his opinion, mine as well. So what he wanted, and then the yeast strain that he used in this showcases some of those floral spices that he really likes as well. So when you go to taste high rye, this is the reason to the middle, because this is our DNA whiskey. This is the whiskey that we will, hopefully always have in our brand to showcase a very versatile whiskey. So if you come into the brand, you try high rye first. What we want is, if you drink your whiskey on a rock, it's not going to disappear in the glass. If you drink your whiskey neat, it's not going to be blown or flat. You put it in the cocktail, it's not going to disappear. Right? This is a versatile kind of do-it-all workhorse whiskey. That's high rye bourbon. What's the proof on that though? High rye bourbon is 111 proof. Yeah. So what I love about this is in the bourbon, it gives you all the feel of rye, right? You get to feel what rye really does, how it dances around the barrel.
Will you check on Facebook Live and see if you're hearing him okay? We had just a little bit of a thing.
Okay.
We're just checking it now.
Okay. Right on. Well, I'm gonna keep talking.
Well, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna have you put that one on. We're gonna try that and see if that's better.
Quick intermission. Sip of water, everybody. Let's be responsible.
Let's see if that one's better.
All right. Check.
No, I brought you up there, so you should be good.
And can you guys still hear me in the live audience?
Yeah, you should be.
All right.
They should have no difference here.
All right.
See if it helps.
Okay. I feel better. I don't. So that's how high rye bourbon. So if you see a whiskey out there and it's got, quite the butterfly, that's high rye bourbon. Now the cool thing is, what is Four Roses not make? Bingo. They don't make a rye whiskey. And that kind of pestered with Jim for a long time, like 30 years. Because he loves what rye does in bourbon. Like he wants to be unexpected. And everyone's making a high corn bourbon. But for commercial reasons with expense and then production reasons with the gauge of pipe, Seagram just was not interested in doing rye. They also didn't want to cannibalize their Canadian business, right? So Seagram's had Canadian business as well, and they were making some old Seagram's rye. So They're like, that's not what four was for. Also, bourbon was doing so well in Asia that they didn't want to mess that up. They wanted to keep sending bourbon into Asia. So
That name, having that name bourbon on it meant more than almost everything else.
correct.
You know what I
You
mean?
couldn't get it anywhere else. It's, it's almost like Mexican Coke. It's way better than American Coke. So if you see a Mexican Coke at Costco versus regular Coke, if they're the same price, which one are you gonna buy? Mexican Coke. That stuff's pure, right?
They're using real sugar.
So,
Also, if you also see
Narcos, right?
No.
That's why it's so good, right?
And at 7:25, the show went off the rails. Okay, good. We're all set. Yeah, excellent.
But yeah, so I mean, I guess Jim, to your point, yes, bourbon was the
Kosher Coke is what I was going for, just in case. You're wondering. Kosher Coke uses real sugar. It's $37.
I love that. The things you learn in Whiskey Wednesday.
All the things I learned about you, brother.
So yeah, high rye bourbon was that. But then Jim wanted to make a rye whiskey. So literally days after he retired, he went to Castle and Key, which was an upstarting distillery, and they needed to get some contracts. And Jim said, "Look, I want to make a rye whiskey." So he had found this grain that when you kiln most grains, when you dry them out to the fermentation, you mill them, they usually turn brown. Like green grains usually turn brown. This particular variety of heirloom rye still carried its greenness through the kilning process. Not, it wasn't as vivid as like green grass in the field, but it still carried a green kind of shimmer through the process. And so we call it emerald rye. And Jim named it emerald rye. In addition to that, he wanted to do, again, something unexpected. There's two really prominent categories. Now, this is not gospel, right? Like other people have done this, but there's two prominent categories of rye, especially when you think about Kentucky. You get what are called 95.5 rye, 95% rye, 5% malted barley, so no corn. Or you get barely legal rye, where it's a 51% rye, I call it rye, but then you want that corn to kick in.
Some of those too, like you start getting, where's I know you're talking about a technical term and legality, it's a rye, not a rye.
Mm-hmm.
But you start getting into those, and we have a lot of those that are out there. It's like, wait a minute, which one's the bourbon and which one's the rye? Because they taste the same.
Yeah.
Because when you start doing like that 51, 49,
and a lot of people do that. Literally, there's some releases that I've seen in the past where it's like the same distillery will do a 51.49 bourbon and a 51.49 rye. I'm like, no disrespect. What's your brain truck show plate? Like you just don't. You just figure out what's in the inventory today and making one thing, just flipping the switch back and forth.
Right.
Let's actually make some variants. So I do think it's cool if you want to taste that and see what 2% change does, but it's just like 2% milk. There's just not a whole lot there.
Right.
And so Jim did a really unique mash bill of 80, 12, 8. So 80% rye, 12% corn, 8% malted barley.
But he's also using this. He's using this type of rye that's a little bit different.
It's a different rye. It's almost like you've heard people using bloody butcher corn. So the prominent corn that we use to make bourbon is #1 yellow day corn. Like that, if someone's not calling out their corn, they're using #1 yellow day corn. If someone's calling out their corn, that's their bride. So like there's bloody butcher corn, or there's heirloom purple corn. You see, like people will call it out because that's such a.
Well, they want you to know.
They want you. It's an investment.
It costs you more.
It costs you way more.
And it's two. It's your point of distinction.
Exactly. And so this particular rye for us is really special. And what I like about this rye.
But by the way, when Jim Rutledge does it, there's other reasons. He doesn't really care what you think of like what he's using. He's just trying to make something that's really good.
Jim did this for Jim.
Yeah, Jim. This is all.
Blue Run did not exist when Jim made this. Jim did this with me for Jim.
I'll let you a little secret. I was talking to Jim one day. I'm talking to Jim, and he had a question for me. He calls me up and asks me the question. So they asked him the question, whatever it was, and I go, "What are you doing?" He's like, "Well, I'm down at Castle and Key, and I'm distilling." I go, "What are you distilling for?" I go, "For me right now, but we'll see how that goes." I get some guys that are talking to me right now. We'll see how that goes. So he was down there having some fun. I go, you missed it so much. He goes, yeah. The only thing is like, I got to be here.
Yeah.
He says, I got to like, the thing is I was like, sort of like trying to get it to the point where I set it and forget it.
Yeah.
Ronco, set it and forget it.
Mm-hmm.
He says, I got to be here.
That's
you know what I mean? Because he's like, if you know Jim, Jim is a very much like he has to be there because to make sure it's done right.
His hands-on.
Hands-on type.
He's gonna watch the fermentation, every single step of it. He's gonna watch distillation. He's gonna check heads, hard cells. He's gonna check all of his guys. Jim's not the type of person that turns Jim's art over to a co-artist, right? Like, he handles his projects, and that's that's the legacy of him, like his fingerprint. If you take 4 rows of pre-Jim, or excuse me, post-Jim, you can hands down, and that's an automated process, but you could just tell the nuances of, man, it's about to ferment it like 6 hours long. But they might have added extra enzymes to speed this up because it's commercial now. Jim wouldn't let that happen, right? So we should,
using constant, like using constant fun.
He was constantly butting up against the evolution of the space. Like, he doesn't. If you taste whiskey, there's a reason that older whiskey tastes different. Because it wasn't automated, it was very hands-on, and that changes things. Like, there's other factors too. Like, our oak was older, and the grain was more established in the field. It wasn't all these new growth filters. Like, there was a lot
less of it being made.
There was a lot less of it being made, and it's just a weird process. Now everyone's cranking it out. Everything's a factory. Jim's old guard. Jim bucks against that, and that turns into really great whiskey immediately. Not when it's 8, 10, 12 years old. Right, his new make tastes better than 8, 9 years old.
Well, yeah, but the other part of it though too is they're expecting their guys like Jim, Elmer T. Lee, they're Parker, they're expecting their whiskey, their bourbon to peak between 6 and 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
That's the time frame that they're sort of like, yeah, you get some 10s, you get some of this, you get some of that. But that's like their sweet spot. That's when they're expecting it to be sort of prime.
Yeah.
When you start getting older than that, that's why a lot of them are small batches and blends, because you got to watch out getting too old. You got to watch stuff.
It doesn't show up in the distilling as well. It shows up in the cooper, right? Like, distillers don't make barrels, right? They go pick barrels to complement their whiskey, but they don't want their whiskey to turn into the barrel. If that makes sense. So that's why that 6 to 8 time frame, that 8 to 10 sometimes on bourbon, 6 to 8 on rye, especially 8 to 10 on bourbon.
Well, rye, I saw it matures early.
Yeah, it's a spicier grain, it interacts,
gets less grainy earlier and stuff.
Precisely. So you just see these little nuances. So Jim really wanted this rye to kind of shine. In my personal opinion, we haven't tasted, but I'm super excited to taste. I haven't tasted the sample, but that's our best for flag. That's our best for whiskey. Our Emerald Rye is truly special. And there's no rye on the market.
It's so weird. I get that. I get the spice. I don't know. I don't want to leave anybody down a primrose path, but I get the spice, right? I get the spice, and then it goes a little bit sweet.
Yeah.
I get like a little bit of sweetness, and then I keep getting a salinic taste at the very end.
So I'll walk you through that process.
Okay, thank you.
So
that's what I was hoping you did.
So whereas again in the high rye you felt the rye, right? You got the cake and it was a feel. In the Emerald, the flavor, that spice you get up front, it's not what you would typically get in a rye and rye. So rye is in a grass family. It's going to taste a lot like dill or mint, generally, right? Like if you get rye and you put it, if you get new make,
think rye bread.
Rye bread, right? It's going to taste very, very earthy, very terroir. This particular rye shows up as like anise and clove, baking spice, and I'm not talking about like the powder that you put on stuff like licorice. This tastes like if you get star anise, whole star anise, and smell it. And you taste it, it tastes like that. It tastes very floral in that regard. Now, when we transition to the sweetness, that 12% corn, that's not average for what you get. Again, it's like adding a little bit of salt to your melon. It complements the spice, but then it shows off. Like, you can't put salt on melon and not taste salt, but you still get the sweetness of melon. That's what the corn's doing here. So you still taste the spice of the rye, which is not a typical rye spice. It's a little bit different. But then you get that sweet overcoat so that it doesn't take that spice too far. Right? Because if it just tastes like anise, it would not nearly be as good. That evolution is a necessity. And so what happens is you get this neutrality at the end of it, right? So you get the showcase of the spice of the rye, you get the showcase of the spice of the sweetness of the corn, and then it kind of intentionally disappears. And what comes in is the natural salinity in your mouth, right? Like you naturally have salt. If you sweat, it tastes salty, right? Like that's natural. So it gets kind of clean. The goal there for Jim was, I want someone to take another sip. Now the whole goal
it's the palate cleanser for the next
takes you back to neutral, but it doesn't have a warm finish. But it takes you back to neutral before you get the vanilla on the finish, and then you go back in. You go through that roller coaster all over again. So it's a really it's really roller. We had a question in the back.
Yeah, are the Emerald and the High Rye the same mash bill?
Are the Emerald and the High Rye the same mash bill?
No, so your high rye bourbon is 65% corn, 30% rye, 5% malted barley, and your emerald rye is 80% rye, 12% corn, 8% malted barley. So different mash bills, quite
Completely.
extremely, yeah.
Yeah.
But this was again, Jim made this whiskey for Jim. Jim wants a whiskey he can drink all day. Guess what the proof is on this? Somebody guess. Somebody guess.
Okay.
Say again.
110.
110. Any other takers? So high rye was 111 for comparison. What do you think Emerald is? 110, 112, 116.7. It's a noticeably higher proof point, but it doesn't kick you near as much. You get a lot more. Again, we get the feel of the rye and the high rye, and you get the flavor of the rye and Emerald, which is super impressive because again, he wanted to take you on a journey of tasting the power of rye.
Right.
And so again, you get the rye spice up front in a way that's not expected. The corn comes in and kind of balances out that spice. You return to neutral. Your palate dries out a little bit. You get the finish of the vanilla, and it makes you want to take another sip because it doesn't give you heartburn like a lot of rye can. That's what Emerald is. Emerald is our most complex but balanced whiskey.
What do you guys think of the rye? Yes.
You can't tell. That's what I get excited. So,
Yeah. I mean, some people don't like rye, but I think this is something a little bit different too, though. What's that? Something wrong with them if they don't like rye? I love rye.
I think a lot of people are intimidated by rye. Like when you start drinking wine for the first time, you don't jump to some big bulk red, right? Like you start drinking something that's a little bit more manageable on your palate. And a lot of ryes, they come out and it's big and bold. You either get like a cocktail rye, like a Rittenhouse or something like that,
right.
or you get like a quote unquote rye drinker's rye, whatever that means. And it shows off a lot of that grain, and the grain generally can show up as dill or mint. And some people can't do mint or cilantro because it tastes soapy. It tastes like something that's a little abrasive. And dill, if you go overboard with dill, it can be a lot, right?
Yeah,
So a lot of people just have it's a very pungent kind of ingredient. And so if you don't balance it well, 12% corn, it's gonna overpower your palate, and it's just not an enjoyable experience. I love those kind of extremes. Like I eat little pickles and I go through chips and stuff like that. I like those things in my natural potential of everything, but not everybody does. Right. And so
Here you go.
let's go. Pickled beer salt. You know what's crazy? I think it used to be amazing on popping.
I bet you would.
Yeah. I'm keeping this.
You know where I got that? You know where I got that? I got that at Bucky's.
I can totally see that.
Bucky's, yeah.
I know where to find it.
Now you know where to find it. When you're
All right, so drum roll, please.
Actually, I get it right.
I like the map. Properly. So, guys, I cannot be more excited, more humble, more grateful. So, Ryan got to work with one of our team members, Jacqueline, and she was saying, "Hey, because when I told the team about it, the one change that I made to the program, two big changes. One, the bottle.
I think you should tell what you really do.
What my job?
Yeah, what your job is, because I think that's important for them to know.
So, my title,
Other than chief cook and bottle washer, doing everything that's required of you,
Correct.
you do actually have an official job.
I am head of consumer experience, but what 60% of my day-to-day responsibility is innovating and pushing forward and developing and managing our single barrel program. So I have a background in the whiskey space of finding and selling or buying, so mostly buying and selling really, really good single barrels. When I joined the team, I told you that I had the consumer focus, and in 2021, at this point, we're a year old. People were like, "When are you come out with single barrel? When are you come out with single barrel?" And we had heard it at 90. It's like, all right, let's test the waters. And if you keep up with like our holiday releases, we used to do something called 12 Days of Bourbon. That was a concept that I created, and it was a single barrel kind of dichotomy. It was 12 different barrels that were just really extreme outliers. And you go through 180 barrels, right? Like a lot of them are going to start tasting the same, especially if you don't have significant variance in age, proof, etc. But I found 12 barrels. I found more than that, but I used 12 barrels out of that to create this series called 12 Days of Bourbon, and it was gangbusters, right? We had Savant Blanc. This whiskey was a juicy, like apple and buttery, whiskey that just popped in your palate.
It wasn't really Sauvignon Blanc.
No, but the notes,
just like, the notes of it,
Blanc,
right?
That you like, they showed up in that whiskey, which is abnormal, right? Like you could blend that into something that makes sense, but as a single barrel, it's beautiful. And so the team and I worked together, and it took about a year and a half, but I developed this program called Chosen. And my intention and my goal with Chosen was that when someone like Orion and Julio Zuckers puts their name, they put lock and key on a product, there's co-investment there, right? And I, after buying hundreds of barrels, like I've had really great experiences and relationship built from them, and I've had really poor experiences and my relationships broken over them. Because if I invest in something with you beyond, hey, I'll buy a case here, I'll buy a case there, like I need you to like understand that I'm investing in you. So let's just reciprocate.
It's supposed. Here's the thing that gets lost about barrel programs, and this is something that we've always done from our conception of our barrel program and what our barrel program was going to be. Our barrel program here at Julio's in the Lock and Key Society was always supposed to be a spotlight on the brand.
Yeah.
What we set out to do was to find something that was really good that we could get behind, that was a sort of a one shot thing, or however it was going to come out, but it would get you thinking about the rest of the brand. This wasn't a glory project for us. This was a partnership with the brand.
I'm going to contrast that and say, not everybody can pick a good barrel. And I'm probably going to piss people off if they're watching TV. Like, not everybody really has as discerning of a palate as they have. So their reputation will precede them, right? And so somebody say, yes, I will try and buy anything that Ryan stamps because that has Lock and Key on it, because I have a familiarity with Ryan. So it doesn't matter the brand. If he went through the gauntlet and tasted X number of barrels and said, this is one worthwhile to have our co-branding on it, like you guys have a certain level of familiarity and ability and comfort with his and the team's palate. And that's huge, right? It's a validation. So I wanted something for the program that was tangible, meaningful, and experiential, right? Why did we spend hundreds of dollars on this thing, obviously? Right? Because it's something that you can benefit from an experience standpoint. I firmly believe this. I also am a very binary person in terms of like I'm this or that. Like there's a little bit of gray area, and that's usually after every drinking, but when I'm sober, then fine. Right. So people drink for one or two reasons exclusively. And every time you go out and have a drink, you can pick. You either drink to feel or you drink to taste. You're either having a drink to feel good.
My cousin says, get to the point.
Yeah.
He drinks to get to the point.
Get to the point. That's the point.
I'm there for the journey.
Yeah. Exactly.
He wants to just get to the point.
If you taste, you'll eventually feel the drink the thing you want to taste.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a good point.
So like you don't like somebody taking a shot. The whole goal is not to taste it. Like, you just want to get it over with. You don't take shots to taste it.
Get to the point.
Yeah. So if we're sipping whiskey, we're building a relationship, we're having a healthy conversation, we're debating, we're asking banter. That's our neutral ground. That's our Switzerland. Whether you're black, white, green, blue, Democratic, rich or poor, like whatever.
Doesn't matter.
The whiskey's in the
Great equalizer.
And that is the art of bourbon, in my humble opinion, or whiskey, especially bourbon, because we're very polarized. Because everybody's welcome until you're not, right? Like in America, right? Every other country is actually racist. I'm gonna say that out loud. But we're in the same pot together, so we gotta be crabs. It's a weird world. So whiskey for me is a conduit. So Chosen, when I designed this, I wanted to give people that conduit into our brand, similar to what Ryan was saying, without oversaturating it, like without making it just the next new trend. And so when I designed Chosen, last year was really cool. We picked your label color, your butterfly color is very, very consumer centric. This year, from an operational standpoint, I simplified it. But from a design standpoint, we really, in my humble opinion, I think we took it to the next level. Like, I think we really knocked it out of the park. The thing is, so this is what the Chosen model looks like, right? So the cool thing about this is that when you walk into a store and you see the Run, you can just automatically identify which is the single barrel, what's the Chosen barrel that this store picked versus our core SKUs. And so we have some LCOs as well, and I'll share with this in a minute. But this little medallion here, and he's got one of the duds that is kind of hard to get off, which is nice. But
yeah, we'll follow.
This little medallion comes off the bottom. It's kind of like a little keepsake, which is really cool because we've had people cut themselves trying to see butterflies. I get you on an insurance bill. People thought I'm not paying for your insurance bill. But I thought you were going to try to rip this off with a bill burning.
I should have thought of
that. I'm not being funny. We literally have received like hospital bills from like cutting themselves and trying to get these butterflies off box. We're like, you should have just DM'd us on Instagram. We would have sent you a
butterfly for now.
You can avoid the emergency room by communicating. So yeah. So this was a little bit of an operation change. It's a keepsake, and it just elevates this particular bottle, in my opinion. And so now, what I'm most excited about. So that's what I do. But what I'm most excited about is the fact that this is the first only. This is the first. I don't know how to say it as big as it is. Like
it's first bottled in bond.
This is the first bottled and bond product that Blue Run has ever done. this barrel, this one barrel, not like this product line. This one single barrel is the first and only bottled and bond product we've ever done. This is the only one that exists in the country.
Doesn't that feel like a federal warehouse be bottled?
This was
No.
this is 100%.
No.
Yeah, it's 100% aged in one place in one season by one distiller, aged in a federally bonded warehouse its entire life, never moved. Just one warehouse. This one product.
They're all federally. They're just not. They don't do the bonded lockup anymore.
Correct. So, I mean, if you go buy
But they are.
a commercial building, you've got to get a bond one, right? That used to be really significant before there was like insurance things involved.
But there's still all the other. Basically, it's still all the rules still apply.
100 proof, one distillation season, one distiller, a minimum of 4 years old, and it's and a bunch of other things. But like this is so cool to me because as a new brand, we've reached back to 1897 and we have a piece of history in our brand now that we did not have until Saturday. Like this past week, Saturday, when this arrived. Like this is the first and only bottle and bond product we've ever had. So that's really significant. This bottle and bond essentially was the platform 70 years in advance that established bourbon as a United States product exclusively. Right. If you haven't researched and geeked out before you could be organic, or even you even had yeast allergies or wheat allergies. Before you could have say alcohol, like before any other thing that was consumed was regulated, the Bottle and Bond Act came. That was huge. Like this is literally U.S. history in a bottle, which excites me. And it's here for us. So this is gonna be my first time trying it, and
Doesn't spend bottle.
yeah. So
The thing about this is, Jackie was really great. She brought a ton of samples for us to go through. And I came to this one, I go, all right, the other ones are good, Jackie, but I mean, I really like this. I go, is this a bottled and bond? She goes, yeah, it is. Cause I can see the ABVs. That's 100 proof.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. It's 50%. It's 100 proof. I'm like, is this natural? Is just a bottle? No, she's just a bottled and bond. I'm like, man, that intrigues me so much. One, and two, the flavors are just freaking pop. She calls me back afterwards and I said, we're going to take that one. We're going to take the bottle and bond. She calls me back after and she goes, listen, I talked to Trey and I told him I was with you. And he said, did he pick the bottled and bond? He didn't know. We didn't even like ask what I picked. He goes, did he pick the bottled and bond? And I'm like, I felt like I passed the test.
Yeah.
Like that was the one I was supposed to pick. And that's the one I did pick.
I can't tell you guys how excited that was. So let me just put in context. So out of the 140 or 50 barrels that I've approved for the program here, I only approved 8 to be bottled. This is the only one that's been bottled. Like that's it. So if even someone else did it, there'd only be 7 more. And no one is even presented like that. Only one of them has been presented. And it was if it alive. Yeah, their students. So I'm in a ride for 2 years.
And they'll be hunting him on the plane because he called them stupid. Checks out.
So yeah, guys. So this is super special, and what I really love is that they added this lot and keeping the dynamic style. So that's really sexy. I mean, I'm gonna buy one of these tonight. So this is really cool. I mean,
You get the defective one.
So this is really cool, and I'm so excited for you guys to be able to try literally a piece of human history. Like when you look back 10 years from now, you'll be able to say that wherever our brand looks like, you were there and try it. The first thing they ever did that really attached them to the history. That's our first ever.
Well, and more importantly, I mean, we're talking on about this, how it came about. Do you like it?
How do you guys feel about it?
How do you like it?
So what I love about it is not that you guys asked, but what I love about it.
Well, I was getting there.
What I love about it is like there's this nice like graham cracker note for like a vanilla. I wish they made like you get the cinnamon sugar graham cracker. I wish I had a graham cracker for you. There's like a vanilla frosting on this graham cracker note, and the oak sugar, like the vanilla and the oak sugar, so nicely. But then the grain kind of just pops in, and kind of shows off what it's like. And it's really nice because it's not thin, right? A lot of people that get the bottle of bond whiskey, that maybe like 118, 120 proof in the barrel, they added all that water to it to get it down.
Yeah, get it to 100.
And so it gets you a little bit thin. Yeah, you get the flavor of the whiskey, but it's like adding, and this is not uncommon outside of the US. Like I've literally seen somebody take a 2-ounce shot in a glass and then fill the glass up with soda or water. And that's kind of what some bottle of bond products, not all. I will shout out Heaven Hill and Bernie Lovers because they are the kings of bottle and bond.
We are actually a bottled and bond account.
They are literally
We are one of the ones.
Bernie came here.
We're actually the first retailer outside. I think it was actually the first retailer.
Yeah,
Maybe the first retailer outside of Kentucky
correct.
to actually be certified bottled and bond by him.
Which is epic, right? And they have a designated section. There's a bunch of things that Trey lovers, the whiskey professor, he's a good friend of mine. And it's a cool thing. But I think if you like whiskey,
But it's a concept everybody that needs. If you're into bourbon, one of the things that you should be into is bottled and bond
Right.
because it really set a even playing field
Yep.
for everybody.
Yep.
Like you made a bottled and bond, you could go up against another bottled and bond. Now you're only tasting basically distillation character differences.
it's like
Everything else is the same. When you talk about comparing apples to oranges.
right.
This time you're apples to apples.
It's like saying you love the NBA and don't know who Michael Jordan is. Like that's how if you like.
I would have went with Larry Bird, but
Yeah, but you know who Michael Jordan is.
Yeah, I know. I
That
quite
was
did.
my favorite.
That's it.
It's
No,
like,
I mean,
oh yeah, Tom Brady didn't play football, right? Like no, you just got to know some things about it.
That's right.
And
No, that's
all
exactly
about
right.
for us. This is our MVP, bottle of wine. And so yeah, I'm super excited. Thank you for picking the right barrel.
thank you. Thank you for letting it be out there so I could pick it.
Yeah. So I'm super excited. Not only this year, not much will get me on a plane every day, and I literally.
Yeah, so it's here. Yeah, you getting your ass over here because
Yeah.
now we're going to be doing this.
And I said absolutely.
Yeah, and so here we come.
So all right, so moving on. I have a
Can you
special.
explain the name?
Oh,
What's that?
Any questions?
Explain the name.
Okay, so we
Okay.
name all of our barrels. So this is bottled in bond, so it's bondage. So the name of this barrel is Safe Word. Now you can take that however you want to take that. Pineapple. Yeah, whatever it is.
Anonymous. Hey, Jen, can you hand me the All American bottle, John?
John, you get the All American bottle?
Can you hand me that? Yeah,
No.
yeah. We all have this with you.
We have a special treat for you guys tonight too. Besides our barrel that we just did.
Yeah, sure. So, don't close to the camera. You'll make them a little jealous. They
I don't
resolution.
know if I can hear. Wait a minute, hold on. Yeah, I can do something. I can do something. I can do something. Hold on. Listen, this is like I know. Well, let's see if it works. You can say that, but let's see. How's it gonna? Oh, there he goes. There we
Look
go.
at that, close up. So, guys, this is something super cool that I'm actually super duper proud of. So, my background in like one of my specialties historically has been finding out, like sniffing out honey barrels. And fast forward on here, I've gotten into blending. And I take a lemon, ready to like went down blender, but I do a decent.
I dabble.
I did one I doubt, right?
I'm somewhat of a blender myself.
I think suicide is some shit.
There you go.
Right? So
Does anybody know what that is?
you just go down and you get everything.
You get everyone? Yeah. Okay.
So this year, so I grew up in a military family, and so I'm very patriotic. I really care about what our country stands for, right, in the world of things. And I wrestled all the way through college, and so I didn't really grow up watching football and basketball. So like the sports that matter to me are the ones that don't get a lot of shine. And they're only at the Olympics, like wrestling, track and field, speed shooting, and stuff that you just don't see in these games. And so obviously this was Olympic year, go USA, kick ass. And
I would want to say the women kicked ass.
the women kicked
They're
ass.
great.
Yeah,
This year.
yeah,
They really
did. Yeah, in every fucking sport, it was perfect. I was so happy. Even wrestling, our women's wrestling program did better than our men's wrestling program this year's Olympics, which is awesome. So, but I wanted to just do something to be commemorative for this year, right? It's 2024. We've had kind of a crazy past 4 years in COVID and just stupid election stuff. Like, I just wanted something fun.
I just want to drink bourbon. Just be an
I just
American.
wanted something to be excited about.
That's right.
Here, right? And so I took some barrels, some honey barrels that I found. And I found the barrels. So I found barrels that when I do my barrel notes, I get barrels of color. Right. I'll say, oh, this is like when I mentioned earlier, like the brown notes and reflection too. I'll generally get barrels of color. So when I was going through and doing some sensory, I found a red barrel. It's really big in red fruit, strawberries and cherries. It's a really big red fruit. And I found a blue barrel. And it was blueberries. It's like blueberry tasty, honestly. And I found a white barrel that was just like this flaky, soft of a barrel. Like it tastes like vanilla and it was soft. And I was like, I wonder what these taste like together. And lo and behold, the red, white, and blue blend, All American, is what I released for. It's a 3-barrel blend of cash and whiskey, 1 6-year and 2 9-year-old whiskeys, blended together and at cash strength. And I can't really proof of this. 110.8 proof. So it's not super high proof, which is sexy, but the mouthful is super viscous. It's super just confectionery. There's a lot going on there that really just kind of makes you feel proud to be drinking bourbon. And so, ladies and gentlemen, All American blend. Cheers.
Here's to America.
Mhm.
There you go. Nothing wrong with that.
And so we released this online because there wasn't much of it, so it's kind of hard to say like, oh, they all put 6 bottles here, 5 of them.
Right.
So we did it online, and So we released it on 4th of July, and kind of ran through the Olympics. We kind of teased it out, and so I told Ryan that I might have 5 or 6 cases if you guys want that. But this is not available in any market because it was online only. But if you guys talk to Ryan, he tells me you guys want it, I'll see what I can do. But the coolest thing about some of the details that Mr. John McKnight. So John McKnight is the younger brother of Jesse McKnight. So one of our co-founders. John is our head of operations in Kentucky. So like we're following, and we get stuff in, and you see John oversees that. He's also this ridiculously sneaky, awesome artist. Like he was woodworking, he had a woodworking degree, like he didn't do that. But he's like, hey, I want to do something special for this. And so these butterflies, each one of these butterflies was hand hydro dipped by John. There's 300 bottles. So he hand hydro dipped 300 butterflies that are one of them. If you look at 2 bottles, none of them are the same. Which I think is another it's another reflection of America. Like everybody's different, right?
Yeah.
But everybody's cool in their own way. So, and we put up here in bourbon we trust. So if I could vote for bourbon this year, I'd vote.
It'd be the much better. I think that'd be the much better vote if you're gonna get down to brass tacks.
Exactly this one.
It's either that or my dog.
So this bourbon's kind of near your mark, super special. When Ryan and I are talking, I was like, yes, I'm so excited. If I'm coming back, let's go with bang. So I wanted to bring you guys something super special that unfortunately you can't get here yet. But I would be doing
We just want you to be able to try some neat stuff too.
Yeah.
All right.
So yeah.
All right. So here's the deal. You guys are all here.
Stay.
Just stay. Don't go anywhere. Johnny, do you have the next one ready?
Oh no. It's locked away.
Oh,
look at that top.
Look at the top black bag. Okay, we're gonna go now. I hope you all enjoyed us here on Facebook Live. Look for It's Liquor Talking wherever you get your podcast. You can back and watch again. You can't see this part because what we're gonna taste does not technically exist. I'm very excited about this, and I hate to say to everybody there that they're gonna go away, but you should have been here. It was awesome. Next time, come to Julio's and do it. But thanks everybody. Thanks for everybody following us today, and we're gonna see you guys later.